Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. It's a wonderful morning again. It promises to be another hot day in West Coast. I don't know how things are with you in East Coast, Sridhar ji. Namaskaram and welcome to PGurus channel for our daily updates with Sridhar.
Namaskaram and good morning, G. We are looking at cloudy gray skies, but that can all evaporate in the next 30 minutes or so, and bright sunshine. So I think we have a mild day coming up here, but very interesting day in all around in markets, politics, as well as in economic context.
Let's start with the politics aspect of it, sir. Yesterday were two town hall meetings, one each individually by Joseph Biden and Donald Trump. What is your opinion about how these two meetings went?
Well, I think it's a tale of two contrasting stories. I think Trump is about he's very optimistic, positive. He called the shots as he saw it. Again, bringing manufacturing, positive momentum in economy, more money being injected into the system, tax cut, and asking. It was an NBC facilitated, asking NBC, goading NBC to ask the questions around some of the social issues and movements like Antifa and other movements that have taken place, and rather than being silent and subtle about those issues, it's just they were socially disruptive. I think so. It was a fairly combative, but very aggressive and very firm. And most important, it was good to see him after his short break with COVID to be back on the campaign trail. Biden stuck to his script, and Biden was about the same thing, which is pro people, more money, more um, denying the scandals, and more around the his method of doing the stimulus, which many people describe it as much more realistic and the other way you actually can afford that level of stimulus.
So the next thing about the scandal that you brought in, so we will segue to that. So those of you viewers that have not been following this, here's what happened thus far. A broken Mac allegedly landed at the store of a Mac repairman, and this person tried to fix it, and after fixing the Mac found out that there was some data, very very critical data about emails from Hunter Biden to a Ukrainian, various people from Ukraine, some people very importantly connected, and so on and so forth. This data was given over to New York Post, which put out a story. That New York Post story was completely panned by Facebook and Twitter, and they are into their own hot water right now. We are going to touch on that in just a minute here. But on the main story, what has happened is the Republicans have really latched onto this, and they have put Biden, especially Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, on the mat, demanding some explanations as to what happened. Now, there is one important thing that I want to mention here is that Joe Biden was heard on a particular conclave where he prided that he got rid of the very regulator who was going after this company called Burisma for corruption. And Burisma is connected with this whole US elections because Hunter Biden was part of that board and he was getting around $53,000 a month from that. Sridhar ji, what do you make of it? Who do you think dropped off this Mac laptop at the service person's desk? Any ideas?
I think it's a great question, but I'm unfortunately not an investigative journalist. I'm an economist and banker, and coming from the financial markets. But the generally in these kinds of stories, you observe that there's always something behind. One important point to add to your story is that he not only dropped, but apparently the shopkeeper, besides calling the authorities, also made a call to Rudy Giuliani, right? Which is to say, and then that kind of gained its own momentum and legs on the back of it. But the fact is that, as they say, that is there a smoking gun or there's no smoking gun, and that will come out. But there's a lot of data that is coming out anecdotally. At least it points out that there's some investigation needed. The connection between uh, the allegations that is being made in terms of the connections to the Ukrainian and some of the decisions made under Joe Biden's vice presidency. And then, of course, also the connections to China, the Chinese connection, Chinese businessmen. Now, Andrew Bates, the Democratic spokesperson, has kind of denied, and he says they have checked, and there's no correlation to the dates that is being attributed, apparently in this. So, what I see in this is that something is going to come out, right? Something is going to crack open, because right throughout the 4-year tenure of President Trump, one after the other, the kind of allegations were thrown at him. All of them found to be kind of not true, which prompted uh, you know, uh, Don Trump Jr. to come out with a video and state for 4 years, they were after me and my father and somehow connect me into some of these issues. Now, here's the case of the Joe Biden's kind of family entangled. So it seems like, there is a lot more political kind of connotations behind it. But having said that, there is some data and, where it goes, it remains seen.
I'm reminded of the Hindi saying, Sao Sonar ki, ek lohar ki. And that video of Donald Trump Jr. is available on YouTube channel of PGurus. In this conversation, when we go live with this thing on YouTube, we will provide you a link with that one also, so you can see for yourself what Donald Jr. said. Now, let's take a look at the stimulus package or the lack of progress thereof. Now, we know that many of the federal governors, as well as Steve Mnuchin, wants a stimulus deal, wants to continue this one. And he yesterday came out and said that if there is more money needed for increasing COVID testing, we will find it somewhere. And what was the response of Speaker Nancy Pelosi to that? Because I thought that was her main sticking point.
I think Nancy Pelosi is probably seizing on an opportunity that has unlocked itself, because Trump is very keen to get this done for the benefit of the people, right? It'll be a political suicide if he doesn't do, and he can be branded as someone who has mismanaged and who needed to do this rather than holding high ground. However true Trump's position may be, right, in the gap between 1.8 versus 2.2 trillion dollars. So he is basically effective. In fact, Trump has gone on to say, I will even come up with a bigger stimulus than what's actually on the table. So the latest this morning's kind of update is seems to be a reconciliation and move towards a rapprochement between the two parties in terms of Democrats and Republicans. Having said that, Mitch McConnell has said many in the Republican Party do not approve of this big package. They do not. They're still sticking to voting on the targeted $500 billion package, which we talked about in the past 2 days. Airlines, small business, local administration and government, schools, and healthcare. They feel that's what is needed in terms of the continuation of the stimulus package and helping the much needed sectors which require support.
Contrast this with what is going on in India, where India is so reluctant to borrow any money from abroad, and they are trying to figure out ways to try and combat the relief for all this stuff by making food available to the lowest strata of the society at the lowest price and so on. It's a very interesting contrast. I'm not saying one is good or the other one is not. It's very interesting contrast because the United States today, being the reference currency of the world, can afford to try and print its way through this problem. Many other countries cannot. Sir, moving on to Europe. The pandemic now is again rearing its ugly head again, because now it is flu season. Temperatures are cooling down. Perhaps corona might have a resurgence. We are seeing some cities declare night curfew. What is your sense on this? Because we also know that a couple of companies have stopped doing their vaccine testing. They're back to the design drawing board, trying to figure out what is wrong. So I see a slight shift in the air. Everybody was saying vaccine, vaccine, vaccine for a long time. And now they are realizing that it is not such an easy game after all. What is your take on that, sir?
Well, I think I said there are two important drivers in terms of the future, right? Stimulus, vaccine. Stimulus, vaccine. Doesn't matter who the president or who the vice president is or who the global leader is. Stimulus and vaccine. Now, it's very clear two trials fell off the rails, Johnson and Johnson and Eli Lilly. Now, today, this morning's breaking news is the Pfizer wants to an accelerated approval to start testing end of November. So, vaccine will continue to drive on. As far as the specific question that you have asked relating to Europe, it seems like there is resurgence of or the second wave of cases that is spurting up. It's not just confined to Britain. It seems to come to France, Italy, even Holland has imposed limited restrictions, and then of course Spain. So there seems to be this tentacle of second wave. It's almost like cause and cure unknown, but people are dispensing with it as they come to see what mitigative measures can be taken. Even in the United States, the cases have begun to go up. We are now back to 54, $59,000 cases per day. Same in India. Same in Asia, which we talked about yesterday morning. So there seems to be this resurgence of cases that is coming up. The only way they're going to combat is basically address it on a knee-jerk tactical basis as things eventuate.
Now, let's take a look at what is coming down on the FCC side, because there was a privilege, in my opinion, that social media companies enjoyed in that they did not come under the purview of what I would call as media or newspaper or TV stations, in that they did not have to comply by some of the rigid rules and restrictions that the FCC imposed on the media outlets. Now, Ajit Pai is reconsidering that, looking at 230. I think perhaps you can shed a little bit more light on that, and what, in your opinion, is going to happen to Facebook and Twitter as Senate hearings are being scheduled right now on what happened regarding the New York Post email story.
Well, I think that's a great question. I think this has been the subject of much needed subject of discussion and controversial, which is whether you treat social media companies as pure play tech companies or you regulate them along the lines of media companies. Media is subjected to certain rules and regulations. Now, tech companies don't fall under that. So they have taken shelter under the pretext that they need to mitigate themselves from any liabilities and damages that arise from posts that appear in the platform by people who are subscribers to the specific platform. That's the mechanism under which they have been laying down rules, and it seems to indicate randomness and arbitrariness. And this is one of the topics that came up in yesterday's town hall with Trump. All the social media companies are pro-democratic, and so therefore you see much more sympathy, and they take the first instance to hide anything that is controversial or contrarian as far as the Democratic Party goes in issues that pop up in the platform. So what we are going to see is that most notably, one of the Republican senators, post was blocked in terms of when he attempted to post. And I think one of them was even, blocked from access to Twitter and Facebook, the Pennsylvania senator. So the story is that this is getting a little bit high-handed in terms of the so-called rules. Now, Darcy was quoted yesterday saying that they botched up the NYU and they were probably a little hasty in rushing to that conclusion of blocking. So, Mike, the point is that there is going to be some form of regulation that's going to come in, especially so if Trump comes back as a president and there is a majority in the Senate. If Trump, if Biden's, then the whole thing the status quo will kind of continue and there will be changes. But change will be inevitable only depending on the political leadership and will in DC.
So the race has tightened up, in my opinion. I don't know how you see it, sir. Today we are not going to look much at the markets or about tech, because we've talked enough about tech today, and we are almost at the end of our program. What do you foresee for the weekend? And when we come back on Monday, we can pick up this daily updates again. Your thoughts, and then we can wind up this program.
As I look at the weekend, there will be stimulus discussions. There would be discussions around the vaccine and the COVID. There will be discussions around the political bickering that just is normal part during this season, and each party trying to hold edge in terms of going in. The latest poll, which I have tweeted, and those who follow me can see the tweet, is that Republicans feel that they are now holding an edge. And the polls don't reflect the electoral college decisions, and the polls don't reflect the true sentiment. There is what they call as an invisible poll. In fact, JP Morgan, one of the reports indicate that JP Morgan internal poll or external poll, whatever research it says, JP Morgan indicates that there is a small tilt towards President Trump.
Thank you very much, Sridhar Chityalaji. And as always, viewers, do tune in. Please refer to our program. We have this thing 5 days a week at 5 a.m. Pacific time, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 5:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Namaskar, and see you all, and have a great weekend.